If you're applying a lot of urea, especially as a foliar application, it's really important to look at nickel as one of our essential nutrients for our plants. And so today we'll be talking about nickel. It'll be a very short video because there's not much to talk about. But basically, nickel is required in the enzyme uranase. Uranase has one job, and that's splitting urea. So this is the chemical structure of urea. It breaks that apart into ammonia, which then gets converted into ammonium for the plant. So pretty much if you're using a lot of foliar applications of urea, that gets directly taken in by the plant. That then needs to be split. If you're using urea onto the soil, a little bit of that can actually be taken up by the plant, but a lot of that will be converted by soil microbes using uranase into ammonia and then ammonium and nitrate. So it's quite important to consider this, especially when doing your urea foliar applications, because if urea builds up in the plant, it can be quite toxic. So you want to be able to convert it, and likewise, in order to actually get your proteins, which is why we're making the nitrogen application in the first place, you need it to be converted. The problem with nickel is that it's a heavy metal, and it can be quite difficult to apply and getting recommendations for it. To know whether or not you have a deficiency in nickel in the first place, I would suggest getting a soil test. In our standard program, we don't really get the heavy metal analysis done just because you don't really need to get it done. And just costs a bit more. But if you think nickel is a problem on your operation, then you can get that included or get that added on. Our sub-tests don't really look at nickel. You can get another sub-test and ask specifically for nickel to know whether or not you have it in the plant. If you do have a nickel deficiency, and it does come up in the soil test and in the sub-test, nickel sulfate, which is NiSO4. You can apply that either as a foliar application onto your paddock or onto the soil. Typically, your soil will have enough nickel, and it's not too much of a problem. What would be more likely a factor is that you have too much zinc or copper, which antagonize nickel. If you do apply nickel sulfate as a foliar, make sure it's in very, very low rates, as it can easily cause toxicity. The other thing with the application is I'd very much trial it first, because you don't want to make the application across your whole farm and it kills everything. So trial it, maybe do a strip, see how it goes, and then roll it out across the nutrition program. Other sources of nickel could include products from, say, sewage. You got to be careful of that because you get a whole lot of other things with sewage as well. So it can be a tricky one. It can be very, very beneficial, especially in pecans. So pecans tend to have a higher requirement of nickel, and there's been a lot of research in determining nickel as a essential mineral for plants. With that, you typically get these formed leaves in pecan. So it looks a little bit like this, where the top of the leaf starts to bend inwards and you get a wrinkling and a greening there. And then the very top here starts to die. It's quite difficult to tell the deficiency. Again, getting a sub test and a soil test is probably better and gives you a bit more of a concrete understanding of whether or not you have a nickel deficiency. And again, if that is something you're worried about and you're going to start using a lot more urea applications, check to see if you have nickel in your soil first, do a sub test, and then do a trial, because you don't want to apply all this nickel across your farm and you kill all your crops. Well, the other thing with urea is that the plant will naturally make a bit of urea as it is. It's just a waste of metabolic processes. And so when you don't have any nickel, the plant might not be able to keep up with that bare minimum, but it should be enough. It's really when we're applying urea as a foliar and trying to get into higher and higher amounts, that nickel might be a problem. Well, anyways, not too much on this one. It's just keep in mind if you're doing urea applications via foliar, or if you have a pecan orchard. Otherwise, if you want to talk about this further, you can sign up for a free consult. Thanks for watching. My name's Till. Cheers.